Welcome back to the Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. As you know, the Fire Break is sponsored by Team Wildfire, of which I'm also the CEO, full disclosure. And we're developing new technologies for mitigating the devastating effects of wildfires. Not stopping all the fires, as I tell you, but stopping the ones that are hurting people the most and damaging property. And speaking of damaging property, I have with us today Stu Korn, who is formerly with the I don't have the breath capacity. Can you say it, Stu?
Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety.
Wow. Thanks for doing that, because I would have needed my inhaler to get through that.
I hear you.
And you were also formerly with Chubb, right?
I was also once on a time with Chubb in their what they call small commercial department division.
Okay.
I was a business development manager there, but I've been in insurance for 30 years.
So when I think about the wildfire situation, I think, about brave firefighters going in there, equipped with the best they can get, whether it's adequate to the task or not. And sometimes it's not, and the losses are severe. And sometimes, the fires really look like there's, no amount of technology could have stopped them. And that'll probably change in the future as tech grows.
I
But
hope.
it seems that, no matter whether the fire teams are quickly successful or not, it's the insurance companies that pay the
Oh yeah.
price of the wildfires. So I have been, racking my brain till my hair fell out to try to figure out why the people who are paying the biggest financial price for wildfire damage, the insurance companies, aren't leading in developing new wildfire suppression strategies. Uh, you know, that seems to be left to either independent vendors or things that get developed, within agencies. Um, but if I was an insurance company, I would be putting a lot of money into technology that would reduce my risks. So that way I could stay in a market and I
hmm
could continue to collect premiums. I wouldn't have to write off, entire states. Uh,
Yeah, that's alarming. What's
why?
going on right now with the pullback in certain states, that's very alarming to me. And it's happening around
Yeah,
the country. They seem to be relying on other entities to do the research, like IBHS, who's probably the most prevalent voice in wildfire today. But I
right.
see it happening everywhere. It's disturbing, and pulling out of states is disturbing. Making insurance harder for people to get does not make sense to me.
Right. And especially when if you were to look at a more granular level, you know, California might have its problems with wildfires and earthquakes, but not everywhere. Not every structure in the state is at risk.
Right?
There's like you could look at on a granular level. Most of that risk is pretty concentrated in certain areas, and you could just do a rate adjustment for those areas, and still provide coverage to people who aren't in threatened areas.
California
But
restricted their carriers from
yeah,
reflecting the rate in the rate, the devastation that these types of losses bring, and that's a big factor in what happened in California with in terms of the pullout and really very few choices for coverage there.
so how and why do you think they did that? Because if you're buying life insurance, you're still going to pay more if you're a smoker, or if you happen to enjoy skydiving and scuba diving, you're going to pay more because of the perceived risk there. So why can't they do the same for wildfire?
I think they thought they were doing the consumer a favor by leaving that part out of the rate structuring and saving people money. What in turn that did was cause the big players to leave ultimately because
Right.
they woke up one day and decided we can't afford to cover that type of risk anymore.
Yeah, fair.
That's bothersome to me because I always felt every account, whether it's a home, whether it's a business, is rateable with the right rate. But that rate may not be sellable. That's a different story. The rate that you can sell as an insurance agent dramatically different than the rate that makes sense sitting at an underwriter's desk.
Okay. Right.
I used
So
to
you
own and
might come up
operate a
with,
workers' compensation program, and that's what I told my underwriters. Every account you see is quotable. The price might make sense on your desk, it just won't make sense on the agent's desk.
okay, right, right. I mean,
Yeah,
the definition of risk is a number, right?
right.
It's not an amorphous concept.
Nope.
So what are you troubled by, right now? If when you look at this industry, what keeps you up at night?
The scarcity of coverage, the inability to get coverage, and that goes for the entire country. Before we went on here, you and I started having a little discussion, and like I knew very little about wildfire initially, but I've learned a lot about it, and that was always a West Coast exposure, a West Coast hazard. I live on the East Coast my entire life. Now I'm in Florida. I never had to think about wildfire, but wildfire is now happening in Florida, in New Jersey, up and down the East Coast. Tornadoes that used to be a thing for the center of the country, Tornado Alley, are now happening in California and the East Coast. That concerns me, and I believe that is directly related to climate change.
Yes.
I
Well,
don't want to get too political, but climate
no,
change, I believe, is the
you know
real
what?
issue
Uh,
here.
I think the only place you could get into political aspect is if you're talking about the causes of climate change,
Mhm.
which, all scientists actually know what they are,
Right?
regardless of whether people accept them here or not. But
Yeah,
what's not debatable is the data that we know. You know,
this is true.
we see the temperature going up. We see the impacts on weather.
Yeah.
Like, this is not up for debate. These are the facts of what's happening
Every
right
month
now.
there's another article. This completed month was the hottest completed month for Januaries in the history of the country. This is what's happening every single month. It's not going away, and we don't seem to be doing enough to prevent it or reduce it at least. There are two documentaries about wildfire that are on Netflix. One was done by Ron Howard. It's about the Paradise Fire, the
Yep.
campfire, I believe they call it. And then the other one, I believe, is the better one. I watched both of them. The better one I'm talking about, I don't recall the name, but it's about 40 minutes long. It scared the living daylights out of me. I did not know much about wildfire when I got to IBHS. I know way more by the time I left. And that particular documentary is one I recommend to everybody I meet if we have a conversation about climate
Is it
change or wildfire.
Elemental Wildfire Reimagined?
I'm not sure what it's called, but it delved into the school bus that those poor children and teachers were on that was covered in a canopy of fire and fire on either side, and the kids are screaming and crying, and the teachers are screaming. And I saw no way out for them, yet they got out. But when you look at the
Amazing.
devastation that was done there afterwards, cars that were burned out, the roads, the streets, the buildings, it looks like a war zone. That scared the hell
Yeah.
out of me. And again, I've never experienced wildfire, thank God, um, but I can only imagine the fear that it strikes in people when you see it like that, and it's uncontrollable. It's very scary. I have a friend that lives in Hawaii. He's not near Lahaina where that fire happened, but I see the pictures, I see the video. Wow, that's all I can say is wow.
Absolutely devastating. And
Yeah,
when you think that the intensity of these fires can be managed in advance and that
yeah,
we just don't do it,
and we're not doing it. That's even
that's the really
scarier.
sad part. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
grew up in the Northeast, so hurricanes and nor'easters were a bigger problem. I experienced Hurricane Sandy, the hurricane that the governor wouldn't let be called a hurricane when I was there. That happened right
right.
before I left, and I was personally hurt by it. A tree fell on my car and crushed my car. That's relatively little damage compared to what a lot of my friends went through. I had friends that were without power for a month. I had friends coming in and out of my apartment at the time to take a hot shower, eat a hot meal, sit and watch some TV with me for 2 months because they didn't have their power back. So hazards happen in many different places and in many different forms. Wildfire is really bad, but so can a bad hurricane that It made land
Right.
at well over, I think, 150 miles an hour. And now I live in a place where hurricanes are normal and people don't get uptight about them. I only left my home for the last hurricane because it was legit and it was coming near my area. P.S. Tampa hasn't been hit by a hurricane in over 100 years, hasn't suffered a direct hit from a hurricane in 100 years. And when I was at IBHS, I used to talk to the scientists there, the really smart people. They had no scientific evidence to support why that would happen. So the local folklore is that there are ancient Indian burial mounds all around Tampa, and that's why hurricanes have avoided Tampa. I believe it because
So
scientists
is
can't give
it,
me
do you
any
think
better
it's
reason.
possible to replicate or to export these burial mounds to other places that are at higher risk?
I wish. I'm sure there are burial mounds all around our country. Most of our, states and cities have Indian or Native American names and connections. So I'm sure they're all over the country. They work best here in Tampa. That's all I can say. And I know this.
Very interesting. So what are you recommending to the industry now that you're working
Yeah.
as an outside consultant, right? You can look at things and you can draw conclusions and you can say them
Hmm.
maybe more freely than you
Yeah.
could
Well,
when they were writing
I'm
your
currently
paper.
with an insurance agency, and that's how I expose my risk management knowledge, if you will. But again, I learned a lot when I was at IBHS. I fully believe in their wildfire prepared home program. That 5 foot area from the base of your house out, that's the key area to be debris free. Things that can catch fire cannot be in that area because if that catches fire, your house is next. And then
Right.
it builds out from that area. I'm sure you're familiar with it. So I learned that, and I have a younger sister. Her and her family live in Portland, Oregon, and there's been wildfires there. So when I went to their house and I saw that the 5 foot area next to their house was not empty, I started talking to my brother-in-law about that and how you really should clear that area out. We're in Portland. We're not worried about wildfires. We're worried about earthquakes. Like I get that. Wildfire can
Yeah.
happen
Well,
here too. Those embers fly miles through the air, miles. That that fascinated me when I learned that, and I kept imploring that to him. And by the time I left there, he agreed he was going to clear out that 5 foot section next to their home. So I felt a
okay.
lot
So he
better
agreed,
about it.
but did he do it?
I think he did it. I've seen pictures and video of what they've done with their house, and I see space. So I'm hoping that they carried that out around the entire house. But I also think that they really don't believe that it's a hazard that they have to worry about. So
Well, that in itself is often the greatest danger. People not realizing how much danger they're in.
that was something we
And I think,
struggled with at IBHS was how to put that message out, how to get people to listen to the message. Because as a society, we grow numb to certain messages, right? I mean, these constant mass shootings, we've grown numb to that. It doesn't even faze people anymore when they hear there's been another shooting. So you hear about another wildfire, it doesn't even faze you. That's a problem in and of itself.
yes, right.
How do you solve
Uh,
that? I have ideas.
yeah.
Other people have ideas too. Doesn't
Well, I'd
work.
love to hear your ideas.
I think we should shout it from a mountaintop. I mean, I think they should make in places like California where that's a severe problem. And by the way, I mean, like what happened to them in the last couple of weeks with the flooding and snow. I mean, this is insane what's going on in our country because of climate change. I think in a place like California, precautions like that, like the 5 foot, zone around your home should be empty from debris. I think that should be a law. Okay, and if you're caught, with shrubbery, then you get fined, and you must take out the potential fire causing debris or fire catching debris. I think
Yeah,
that
and it's
gets
not.
people's attention.
Yeah, and of course, when you say it should be a law, that's going to get people's rankled up. Like,
Yep.
don't tell me how to keep my
Right.
house, blah blah
Don't tell
blah.
me what to do.
And to the degree that their house might be the only thing at risk, okay, fine. But the problem is that when your house does burn, you endanger all of the houses,
In
within
your
40
neighborhood.
miles of you right?
Exactly.
You're gonna burn your neighbor's house, and you're gonna start a
Yeah.
huge embercast storm, and
Yeah.
that can go off
People
and
tend to
impact other
protect their
neighborhoods.
investment, and their biggest
Yeah,
investment usually is their home or their car.
right.
Those are the things that are going to burn in a bad wildfire. So why wouldn't you protect that? I think people are concerned about the
Yeah,
aesthetics, the look of the home, but I want that kind of tree next to my house. But that kind of tree catches fire, or it's known in a drought to get really dry and it can catch fire. But I want that
so
tree. I want it next to my home.
yeah, right.
People
So
have
you're
to
typing the
people have to get over
vegetation.
that. Say
Yeah,
again?
but I think that it's not just that it has to be naked and ugly. It has
No,
to be fire appropriate.
right.
Uh,
And people have
and that
proven
doesn't
that
mean
you
you
can
can't
do
have
that.
anything growing, right?
You
You
can
can
do
put
that
fire
without it
resistant
being
plants.
naked and ugly. Yeah, that could be
Yeah,
done.
that's right. So you have to educate people about, what are the safe ways to
Yep,
occupy zone zero vegetatively. Uh,
yep. There's
not put
ways to
the
do it.
junipers and high oil plants there,
Hmm.
but
Yeah,
there's ways to do it.
yeah.
And we
To use my brother-in-law as the example, I showed him the dried leaves that were collecting around the edges of his home. I said, "Those are fire starters." An ember drops in there. Somebody mindlessly flicks a cigarette or a mat. Boom, goes up in flames, and your house is next.
have
To me,
you
that's common sense.
personally Yeah, no, it is. Have you personally interacted with people who've lost their homes to fires?
I have not. I have
Okay.
interacted with people who have suffered hurricane damage to their homes and lost their
Uh-huh.
homes in hurricanes. But
Okay.
fortunately for myself, not from wildfire.
Okay. Well, I imagine the experience is not dissimilar. Like if you lost your
No,
home,
it's
you
the
lost your
same kind
home.
of thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, your biggest
And if
asset,
people,
your home, and you lose it, whether it's partially damaged or completely damaged or totally burned down, that's a really severe loss. You need a new place to live. Your insurance company's getting involved. They're either paying or not paying the claim. They pay a percentage of the claim, not the whole thing. They're depreciating
yeah,
value on things certain times. And you're stuck in the middle as the homeowner, like, I just want a place to go to sleep at night.
right. And people
Yeah,
who take the attitude that like, so a fire comes, my house is insured. They're not really taking into account the full practical and emotional impact of
absolutely. And you can't unless
how
you
their
suffer
life is
that
about to
loss.
change.
Yeah, you can't until you suffer that loss. And people know virtually nothing about their insurance policies until they suffer a claim. Then they suddenly
Mhm.
want to know, well, what do you mean I don't have coverage for that? Mr. or Mrs. Agent. Well, I tried to sell you that coverage and you didn't want it. Well, you only want the
Right.
coverage when you need the coverage, goes the saying.
Yeah, you can't buy it the day before when the smoke starts
And you
coming in.
certainly can't buy it the day after.
Right. No, that would be very expensive.
No, and that's where parametric
Yeah.
insurance, which is kind of an emerging class of insurance, really comes in. Those have very definitive triggers,
Okay.
and claim payment comes very quickly after the trigger is pushed, and that can happen via a physical sensor in an area that may measure the rise of a flood or may measure wind speed. That will trigger the coverage, and the claim gets paid regardless of the amount of damage. So
Can you
that
explain a
that
little
is
bit
the
more
emerging form of insurance.
what the model is, what parametric insurance is?
Parametric insurance again has a trigger. So let's
Okay.
say it's the height of a flood. Let's say it's 1 foot in water rise or water incursion, and that will literally trigger the policy. And then they make a payment that's prearranged and pre-agreed to, regardless of what your damage is. So it can be paid in a day or two or three, much quicker than a normal claim would, where you got to wait for an adjuster to come out, view the damage, assess the damage, put a value on it, depreciate it, that could take sometimes months. Months. When
Yeah, I'm
I
sure the
when I
people
went
here in the
through,
Marshall Fire could tell you all about
mhm,
that.
yeah,
2
when I
years
went
later, and some
through
of the homes are still under construction.
when I still lived in New Jersey, I experienced Hurricane Sandy, And it took 3 days for an adjuster to get to see my car, which had been crushed by a tree. And he was flown in by my insurance carrier from Los Angeles. So they were flying adjusters in from everywhere. He finally got. I take that back. It wasn't 3 days. It was a full week afterwards. Being in insurance, I knew enough to put a tarp over my car so it wouldn't suffer any further damage. I didn't want to give them a way to deny the claim, so you didn't protect it post damage. But he came from Los Angeles a week later, saw my car, and in 2 seconds, by the time I took that tarp off, he was already writing his report and totaling the car. And he says, I got to go. I can't help you put the tarp back on. I got to
Right.
go because I got to go
It's
assess more
10,000
damage.
people to see. So
Exactly.
that your tarp trick is interesting, and that brings up a whole other direction. As a former insider in the insurance business, what are the tips that people should know about, what type of coverage to get, how to
Yep.
not get, discounted overly when it's
Mhm.
claim time?
That is a great
How
question.
how do
I'm glad
consumers
you
get the
asked it.
best?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I'm really glad you asked it. People think it's smart to give lower values on their stuff to drive their rate down and get a less expensive policy. You obviously regret that as soon as the claim occurs. I always tell people, and every single year, my parents live on the other side of Florida. I'm in Tampa, Florida. My parents are in Palm Beach County. Every year, my dad calls me to go over the quotes he's gotten for his homeowner's policy. And I tell him two things. You get replacement cost on your roof because that's a very valuable coverage. And here in Florida, it's hard to get. And you want water damage coverage. And that's also very hard to get here in Florida. But those are the two coverages I tell everybody to get, whether you're living in New Jersey or California or Florida. Those are critical coverages. I just dealt with a friend who could not get replacement cost on his roof. He had to take actual cash value. That means you're going to suffer a damage to your roof of X dollars. They're going to first depreciate the entire value of the roof and then apply that depreciation to the damage portion and pay you a percentage of that. So you're not getting full coverage for your roof. If you want that, you're going to pay more money. I'd rather be the person who paid more money and didn't use the policy than the person who cheaped out and ended up with a claim and now it's not getting paid in full. And now they're like, oh, that damn insurance company screwed me again. Because people think of the insurance company as the big bad insurance company. They set out rules and it's all in your policy and it says what's covered and what's not covered. The problem is nobody reads the policy. Nobody buys the
Well,
coverage, like I was saying to you before, until they need the coverage. Then it's too late.
I mean, yes. So people have limited availability to develop both knowledge and expertise in this. And when my insurance agent, or when I bind a policy and they send over like 127 pages of legalese, why would they be surprised that people don't read it?
That's light reading, late at night, to put you to sleep. The
Yeah, it
best way
would.
to teach somebody insurance in my side of the business now is to give them a policy and tell them to read it. That's the way we did it in the old days. That was how I learned it. I read it and I asked questions. I'm
Okay.
not suggesting that any layperson should literally read an insurance policy because it will put you to sleep, guaranteed. But ask questions. Ask questions of your agent. Make sure they're giving you the right answer. My father had, I told him to ask for those two coverages, right? He then had an interior water damage claim in their house. And he went back to the agent, and the agency owner said to him, well, you don't have coverage for that. And my father says, I have it right here in an email from this guy who works for you who said I have water damage coverage. Now, mind you, my dad sent the policy to me, and I searched 8 ways till Sunday and did not see the words water damage in his policy. And I told him this. He showed me the email. I said, you better hold on to that email with both hands because God forbid you have a water damage claim. You're going to need that. So he says this to the agency owner whose response is, that's why that guy doesn't work here anymore. So I told my
Right. And it
father,
probably says in the policy, right, that
yeah,
if it's not on the page, it doesn't exist, right?
exactly. You
We're
can't
not
add
relying on
coverage
any
with an
oral
email.
representations or right side deals.
Yeah,
The
right. You don't
policy is
have
the contract.
coverage because the guy told you in an email. And that was what I said to my dad. I said, you have two choices. you can file an errors and omissions claim against that agency for that guy lying to you. But I
Yep.
guarantee you now, no other agent in this town will ever work with you again if you do that. Or you can just suck it up and pay the claim yourself. That's what he ended up
I
doing.
see. So
Unfortunately,
you
that's what
said
he
that
ended up
people
doing.
should ask questions, and I know most people don't know enough about insurance to even
Right.
know what questions they should be asking. So what's the bet? What's the is there like Insurance for Dummies book, or are you
Uh,
are you
the
going to write
the
that book?
the magic pill for that is to have a son that's in the insurance industry. That's what my parents did.
That was their
I didn't want to
strategy.
be in insurance. They made me go into insurance.
Uh,
No, I mean
Interesting.
that's everybody knows somebody. If you're not asking the question, how do you get somebody to ask the question they don't even know they're supposed to be asking?
Right.
I
And so
mean
what I'm
that's
asking,
hard to do.
if you created a short PDF, I could put it on my website,
There you
and
go.
it would be like, 20 questions you shouldn't fail to
Hmm.
ask your insurance agent,
Yeah, I
or
do that for
a
my
simple
friends and my family.
vocabulary list.
Uh-huh.
Hmm?
I do that for friends and family. I mean, to friends and family, look, Thanksgiving was a horrible holiday for me when I first got into insurance because I'd be with my entire family, and they would literally get in the line and ask me insurance questions. But I knew I was the
Okay.
insurance guy in the family, so I had accepted that fate. I was okay with that. Unfortunately, people I don't know don't even know to ask me that question because they don't know what I do for a living. So
I see.
it happens.
So
But
you had
everybody
the
knows an
insurance
insurance
equivalent
guy.
of being the doctor in the family, and everyone lines up. Does this look infected to you?
Well, my mother always wanted me to be a doctor. I didn't want to go to school that long, but I graduated college with the handwriting of a doctor. I can't even read my own handwriting. So
Well,
that's
that's
me.
80% of the way.
That's true. But how do
Yeah.
you teach people to ask the questions they don't even know what to ask? Nobody likes to
Right.
talk about insurance because they don't know enough about it. I wish there was a better way. I wish the industry could do a
Yep.
better job of educating the general public. That's where it begins and
Right.
ends. But we don't. We just don't. That's a shame.
So you don't because it benefits the insurance company to have people not understand what they're buying?
Unfortunately, it does. I
Right,
don't
because
want to
obviously
believe,
if it benefited them, they'd be doing it,
right?
and they're
I don't
not
want to
doing it.
believe that that's why they don't educate the public. Because if that
Yeah.
was the truth, that would be really bad about an industry to do that. But yeah, they benefit from people just not knowing enough because that keeps people from filing a claim and it keeps them from fighting a claim. They say, well, I guess that's all I'm going to get for that. So I guess I just got to take that and be happy. When in reality, a very big company that I know of, and again, I'm not somebody who throws anybody under a bus, a very large company in our business, in the insurance industry that everybody would know if I said the three letters that represents that company. I once had a meeting in New York City with their top claims guy. And I was trying to sell him a service that at that time I was selling to claims people. He very proudly told me that just down the hallway from him is a room full of lawyers. We deny every claim and we practically beg them to litigate the claim. Most people take a claim declination and go away and never ask a question. Some people question it. Some people go and get a lawyer and sue the insurance company over it. And they love that because they have a room full of lawyers who are already paid, who have no other work to do other than work for that company. So they can litigate you all day long. It doesn't really cost them much of anything.
Yeah,
And they
who's
have
gonna
that
run out of money
advantage
first,
over
right?
regular people. Say again?
Yeah. I said, right, who's
Yeah.
gonna run out of money for lawyers first?
Right.
The
I'll never
homeowner.
forget that meeting. And I walked out of that meeting and I stood on the street. This is down in the Wall Street area. And I just stood on the street and I just looked around and I couldn't believe what that guy had just said to me. That was their claims process. Deny the claim, hope that they litigate. Wow. That's
Why hope
insane.
that they litigate? Why not just hope that
Because he
they
could
go
litigate
away
all day
quietly?
long. He's not worried about it.
Oh, I
There's a
see.
newer company that somebody started because they believe that uh, tech-enabled claim instigation is occurring. That because of technology, the claim filers are ahead of the claim payers, the insurance companies, and tech-enabled claim instigation. And that causes a lot of claim litigation, which only helps one group of people. Last I checked, that was the lawyers. And then
Hmm.
there are companies like Prime Insurance Company. Rick Lindsay is the CEO there. He's the anti-insurance company. He gives you the coverage and the policy, but you pay the right rate for it. And he fights the litigation. They just won a massive litigation claim. I forget what state it was in, but they won it was like an $80 million judgment in their favor. Bravo. I love when an insurance company fights a claim, fights a lawyer, and beats them, because the lawyers are oftentimes what drives up the cost of a claim.
Yeah, right. I have a friend who does a lot of litigation work in Florida related
Hmm.
to sinkholes.
Oh, yeah.
And right, did the builder properly, site survey the area? Did they do the right
Hmm.
soil testing, drilling, etc., before
Yeah.
they put a big building on it?
You know what the number
And
one reason in Florida is for carriers not wanting to write here? Has nothing to do with the weather patterns, has nothing to do with hurricanes or heavy rain or flooding. It's litigation. That's what keeps carriers from writing homeowners policies here. That's what keeps carriers out of the Miami-Dade, Broward area. That is the highest fraudulent claim rank area in the entire country. That's what keeps
are
them
these
out. When I
these
first came
fraudulent
down here,
claims are advanced by attorneys?
yeah, oh, of course. There was one firm down here in Florida. They've been shut down because other attorneys complained about them. They drove, like, I want to say, some insane percentage of the claims here. Like 50% of the litigated claims belong to this one law office, and they've since been now shut down and had their law license taken away because so much of it was deemed fraudulent.
Wow.
It's great that they got to that, but look how long it
Yeah,
took.
right. It
Look how
saves
many
every
carriers it bankrupted and drove out of Florida before they finally attacked it.
not good.
Scary thought.
So for people who live in wildfire prone areas that, or now fine, because I divide the world into two places, like places that are on fire, places that are gonna be on fire. So,
That's a good way to do it.
right, like, don't tell me, like, oh, I live up in upstate New York, we don't have wildfires. Okay, they're coming, right? It's gonna
Yep.
cross the borders, like,
Oh, yeah.
every place is a rich fuel environment.
How
So
much of
so
Canada
people
was
don't
on
know
fire
how to
last
buy.
summer? What
Yes,
percentage of Canada was on fire last summer? Like 75% of it was burning? You don't
yeah,
think any of that? We saw the smoke even here in Florida. I know they saw it in New York City. I saw pictures
yeah,
of a Met game one night that it looked like the whole place was going dark from the smoke. So we
yeah.
get the effects of it. It's everywhere.
Well, there are people who, when they bought in the WUI, knew that they were going into a wildfire prone area,
Yep.
and they think maybe rightfully that they can mitigate around their property sufficiently and maybe, clear off a big enough area of vegetation that they could survive
Right.
if the smoke didn't kill them. Um, but there's a lot of people now who find themselves in a wildfire prone area that didn't know anything about it a year or 2 years
Right.
ago. And all of a sudden, so what do we need to do to bring them up to date to make sure they have the coverages that they need?
Well, first of all, state and local authorities need to speak up and restrict people from building in certain areas. I could use New Jersey as an example where I grew up and I was near the shore. There are areas there that every single year get ripped apart by a nor'easter and flooded. But yet every year when I drive down, Ocean Avenue there, which separates homes from the water and more homes on the water side of the road, they keep building closer and closer and closer to the ocean. And why do you think they let them
Mhm.
do that? Tax tax dollars. Too much money to the town. So
Yeah,
it's
well, then
time
those
that we're
some of those
past
tax
that
dollars
point.
should have to pay the cost of rebuilding.
Yeah, we're past the point of, sure, let them build. We make money on it. We're past that point. We're past that point. Now you have to start restricting people from building in those in too close to in a WUI or too close to the water. You can't have that. I spent time with a company that writes excess and surplus high valued homeowners, right on the water. Like, I mean, multi-million-dollar homes. The biggest home I wrote there was a $17 million home right on the water. Storm happened. It flooded that house out. The home wasn't damaged that way, but the flood damaged it. That's what damaged it. The structure was not damaged, just waterlogged and that. But that's a claim too, and that's a lot of work for some water restoration company to come in and remedy.
No, yeah, that's horrible to go
Yeah,
through. My
yeah.
mom went that, and they take off
Mhm.
all the sheetrock, put in all the
Mhm.
blowers and this and that. Like, it's very disruptive. I
As if
saw
you
it.
don't, then you got
Um,
mold, and it's a whole
yeah,
other.
right. Exactly.
You could
And
do a
then,
whole other episode on mold.
yeah, I bet. So, so let me ask you about a model that's out there, and it's specifically the relationship between Chubb and wildfire defense systems, where Chubb hires this, private wildfire company to mitigate the risks specifically around their insured properties. Do you think we're going to, first of all, I'm guessing this saves them money and is worthwhile, or they wouldn't do it. Do you think we're going
It's
to see
risk
more
management, right?
insurance companies? What's that?
I said that's risk management, right?
Right. So do you
They're
think we're going to
paying a
see
company to come in and
more,
make this house resistant, let's say, to wildfire.
yeah, put a fire truck there during the season, mitigate with sprinklers,
Yeah.
lay down long-term retardants? Do you think we're going to see more insurance companies taking
Oh
a
yeah.
proactive role in loss mitigation?
They're either going to take a proactive role in what's going on again in the entire country, thanks to climate change, whether the hazard is wildfire or tornado or hail or hurricane, heavy winds and rain, um, or they're going to stop writing in certain states the way that's happening now. It's one or the other. They have to manage their risk, and that's how they're doing it. You either, good risk management teaches you either eliminate the risk by not being there where the risk is, or you protect against the risk happening. So those are your choices. There's not a lot of choices. Those are the choices. So when it comes to
Yeah.
wildfire, either agree with the 5 foot area around your home being, basically debris empty, but that builds out to further and further where you further protect your property. So that's part of it too. Just having the 5 foot area, the zero zone or whatever you want to call it, empty, that's not the only thing you can do.
Right. Because
Those
there's
embers don't just
radiant
crawl
heat will
along the
light your,
ground.
yeah, and radiant heat will light your house from 30 feet away.
That
So,
too. My brother-in-law did not understand why I was so upset with him that he had a wooden fence attached to his house. I said,
well,
because
that's to
wood
help the
catches on
fire get all the
fire.
way through the neighborhood, right?
Right. Wood catches fire. I said, you should have I don't know, plastic, polyethylene, whatever it is, or metal fence that won't catch fire. Or it just melts and lays there and doesn't do any further damage, whatever it
Yeah.
might be. But those things aren't as aesthetically nice as a, nice, ornate wooden fence.
I've seen people's tile floors that look just like wood, and tile
Yeah.
doesn't burn.
Oh
So
yeah.
it
No,
can
I
be it
live in a
can be
house
done,
with
right?
I live in a house with fake wood floors. You wouldn't know they were fake if I didn't tell you. I had to
Now I
ask twice
know
when
those
I
two.
moved in. Sure, that's wood.
Right, manufactured wood products.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But that's part of the way you prevent it.
right. Stop putting flammable stuff out there where the fires happen.
Yes, and insurers should insist on the homeowner playing a role in that prevention. Right? They're not in this alone. Too many people think, well, I bought a homeowner's policy for that. I don't have to do anything about it. I'll just let it happen, and they'll pay for it. Doesn't work that way. I told you that story about my car being crushed by the tree and how I threw a tarp over it. Your homeowner's
Yeah,
policy has wording in it that says, in the event of a claim, until they can come view the claim and assess the damage, you have to protect against any further damage. That
preserve
means
the
tarping
evidence.
over my
Yeah,
car because so more rain didn't get in. That means tarping on your roof so that more water doesn't flow into your home. That means throwing a fire resistant tarp over your burning fence so it doesn't catch onto your house. That's what people have to do,
You're
and
right.
they don't know that.
Mitigating your proper. I mean, you can have wooden stuff that, if it's treated with the right metal salts,
Yep,
renders it pretty non-flammable.
yep.
A spray bucket, spray can, and you can treat
Oh
things
yeah.
very effectively.
Mitigation
But
is a key word in that area.
you got to do it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of one of the sayings that one of the scientists I used to work with at IBHS, Dr. Ian Giamenko, who's a hail expert of all things. He had a saying
Hmm.
about mitigation. Um, well, mitigation equals resiliency may have been the gist of it, but it all
Hmm.
feeds in together. Resiliency, mitigation, it all works together. It's a coupling, if you will, of two ideas. But that's critical. Critical.
Yeah. Well, it's eye-opening conversation, and and I'm gonna task you with generating, a one-page list for me of things that people who are living in the WUI need to know about their insurance policies.
I get a
Uh,
homework assignment for coming on with you.
you do, but yeah,
I
because
didn't do my homework when I was in grade school. Now I got to do homework for you. Jeez.
yeah, well, we're at the age where giving back is key to our lives. Um,
Absolutely. I
right,
think
and
that's
if
why
we
we
can,
share the same barber. No,
that's right,
I have no
exactly.
hair to pull out when I get frustrated. I can't pull any hair
Yeah,
out.
same here. Yeah, well, it's so this is, you know, fire mitigation,
There you go.
right? Most people have stuff growing on their head, which has a
See?
very high surface area to volume ratio, and that makes it very
Exactly.
flammable. And
That's
we are
why I
not
do
going
this.
to contribute to that problem.
That's why I went with this look. I wanted to prevent wildfire.
at least, within the space of the WUI
In
between
this
your
very
ears, right?
small space of my head. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's really what it takes, right? Each person taking responsibility for their own spaces.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
right, right. Stu, fascinating chatting with you, and I'm going to call you, and we're going to put that little pamphlet together so that
Yeah.
people know what to ask, because
Oh yeah.
it
I still
really
have the
is
information in my head.
blinding.
I'd love to put
Good.
that together for you.
We're going to siphon it
Uh,
before it's too late. Stu, thanks so much for joining me on the show today. It was really, really fascinating, and we're
Thank you
going
for
to get you
having me. I
back here.
appreciate the conversation.
You bet. You've been listening to the Fire Break. Uh, if you want to get in touch with Stu Korn, it's Stu Korn right here on LinkedIn. You can find him, and you can pick his brain too. So anyway,
Whatever's
thanks so
left of
much
my
for joining
brain.
me
Yeah.
for the episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks to sponsorship from Team Wildfire. Take care.
Thanks.